Okay, this is great. Lee Marsh says, I'm currently at Pinewood on a course. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but everyone, he says, is having a little imposter syndrome. Any fresh thoughts on that? Yes, I do have fresh thoughts on that. I think imposter syndrome is not a monolith, and I don't think it's always, do I deserve to be here? Because I think there's another aspect of imposter syndrome that is, wow, maybe I chose the wrong path to creativity. And that guy's talking about his path, and that sounds amazing. Sounds like he's really got it wired. Maybe I should have done that. Mine sounds kind of lame compared to that. This comparing mind of somebody else's discipline versus yours. I think that's where a lot of imposter syndrome comes up, especially people who are like have reached high levels of success in something you know nothing about. But I think when you're feeling that specific version, I think that there may be something else going on, and I think it's a really potentially positive thing. And so I will put it this way. I spend my life as a creative person chasing things that I find interesting. I have built a life in which I get to do that repeatedly at tiny scales and at bigger scales and at even bigger scales. And it is a really incredible grace. I get to see things I never imagined I get to see. I get to see things I get sometimes to see things few people get to, flying in the U-2 spy plane. And I use those opportunities to help other people understand what I've just seen, right? I want to give back by explaining that. And it is a constant source of joy to me, both the incredible library of experiences I have had, and what I have learned doing it. And I came up with this idea, with this phrase called chasing wonder. I chase wonder. I chase my curiosity. And I am lucky enough to count as friends and colleagues a lot of people who do the same thing. And I think when you're around other people, because I came to this realization that I'm about to drop at a conference that included it was a tiny little conference, like 30 people. There were some financiers there who had been surpassingly successful. There were also some guy ran all of the hospitals in New York City for like 15 years. And then there were like some world-class alpinists, like the first guy to climb K2, like a really interesting amalgam of people. And we were all talking about imposter complex all weekend long. And towards the end, I gave a little talk where I said, where I gave the talk of what I'm saying to you right now. I think that this is a self-selected group of people who chase wonder as a life goal. And they talk about it and they promote others to do it. And that's the cycle. And I think that when we hear somebody else who's chasing wonder that's different than ours, well, we know what it's like to go chase our wonder. We know the joy and we know the pitfalls and we know the travails, but we know that deep satisfaction of what comes back from that. And then someone else is like, I climbed K2 and I learned all this stuff about myself. And you're like, oh, that sounds amazing. I wonder if I should have done that instead of the thing that I did. Wow, that sounds really amazing, climbing K2 and taking 2 weeks in freezing cold weather when all I do is make movie props look really accurate. That sounds like way more important. Now, that's a little bit of imposter complex. But what I'm getting at here is I think that often what's happening is you're just excited about someone else's path to wonder, and you're thinking, maybe I should try that one, or maybe I could have tried that one, or what does that pathway feel like? I think that can help us connect with the journey that others are on. Because nobody, Neil Gaiman tells a story about being at a conference and meeting another man named Neil. And that other man said to him, I don't know what I'm doing at this conference. And Neil Gaiman said, well, Neil, you did land on the moon, so I would assume you'd start there as to why you're here. And Neil Gaiman was astounded that astronaut Neil Armstrong was displaying and expressing some imposter complex. But the first time I went to the Mars conference, I bumped into my friend Mike Massimino, the astronaut, and Mike was like, I don't know what I'm doing here. I mean, it is very universal. And I think that it can help us to consider that one of the things that's going on is not just a self-shame or getting down on yourself. I think it might also be a little bit of sort of a beautiful jealousy of someone else explaining how they learned more about themselves, how they became a deeper, more interested, more present human being. Jaws of Joey. This is the first time I've answered a Jaws of Joey question. Terrific username. Says, I've just completed my first cosplay helmet, but I had to set a hard deadline because I got discouraged by mistakes and fails early on in the process. Any tips for getting over failure and pushing through? Well, your question has my answer in it. Because one of my favorite things to ask myself is, what would I do if I was on the clock? What would I do if I was on the clock? What would my solution be if I was working for someone else? And I can't describe to you how fast that often makes the right solution arrive. It's not the best solution, but it's an appropriate one, and I can get it done. I feel you on that. I actually think deadlines are completely intrinsic to making stuff. Artificial or not, I mean, essentially all deadlines are artificial, just as all decisions are essentially arbitrary. But deadlines are one of the key ways that I push myself to get something done. Yeah, that is a terrific one. Let me see if there's something else that you, let's see. Set a hard deadline. You get discouraged by mistakes or fails early on in the process. The other thing that I would say is, don't be afraid to set yourself up for the understanding that I'm going to build this, and maybe as soon as I'm done, I'm going to build it again. That is a really, really, it's great to think that in the front. Okay, let me put it this way. You're going to the holidays with your folks. How do you want to walk in the door of your folks' house? Do you want to walk in thinking that you haven't had a single thought about them until the moment you enter their house and into the family melee and all the feedback loops that exist in your family? You want to have not thought about any of that stuff? Or just before you open the door, should you maybe remind yourself, I'm about to go spend time with my family. We all know what that means. I know how it's going to affect me. I know the things that I'm going to respond to. I know the positive and negative reactions that I will have. Let us be at peace with the fact that this will all play out in the way it always has. That is a better frame to enter a difficult situation. And so, you know, when my son asked me to build something with him, I said, okay, well, this is 10 years ago. You should get ready to build it 3 times. And he was all like, such a teen thing to do. But seriously, like, getting yourself set up at the beginning to make it twice, it's not going to be as hard to repeat that build. And the second build of it is going to go so much better. You're going to be astounded, because the first build is, I often build it once just to put it in my body. That's how I describe it. Making it puts the totality of the thing in my body. And then the second time I make it, well, now I know what I need to know. I know all the things that I didn't know that I needed to know on the first build. I hope those answers are useful. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to support us even further, you can by becoming a tested member. Details are, of course, below, but it includes all sorts of perks, and we're building them all the time. You get advanced word and behind-the-scenes photos of some of our projects. Questions, you get to ask direct questions during my live streams, and we have some members-only videos, including the Adam real-time series of unbroken, unedited shots of me working here in the shop. They are weirdly meditative. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you on the next one.